Hello and welcome back for some more creepy stories. Today I have a collection of 23 ghost stories for you. If you haven't, please like, subscribe. I always appreciate that. And I will get started. 23 real ghost stories that will make you believe in the paranormal. This collection was put together by Emily Madriga. Auntie Says Goodbye. When I was around 5, my aunt got diagnosed with cancer, so my mom left me at my dad's for over a month to be able to care for her 24/7. One night I woke up crying and asking if my mom came with my aunt. When my family questioned me, I said my aunt came to say goodbye and that she loves me and will take care of me. But did my mom come with her? I miss my aunt. 5 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was my mom telling us my aunt had just passed. Snow in Alabama. My Uncle Bill died when I was 4. He and I were incredibly close. He was my favorite, and I was his. I lived in Colorado, but we went down to Alabama for his funeral. I'm 31 now, so I don't remember him actually visiting me, but I do remember telling my mom, "Mom, Uncle Bill says it's going to snow." My mom calmly reminded me that Uncle Bill was gone, and we were in Alabama in 1995. It doesn't snow here. Uncle Bill and I got the last laugh when all woke up the next day and it was snowing in Alabama. Very lightly, but it was there. Ghost Grammy. My mom died when I was a pretty young adult. I couldn't get her to answer her phone, so I went to her house to check on her and found her body. My mom's sister and I have always been very close. When she came in town for the funeral, we decided to spend the night at my mother's for a few nights to feel closer to her and be amongst her things. We were sitting in the living room with her cat. When I found her, her cat was curled around her head. She loved that cat. We were talking about her life and it got a little bit deep. Both were crying and hoping she was at peace. Suddenly, the cat who was sitting between us jumped up and started hissing at the fireplace. Then the flue to the fireplace slammed shut really loud and scared the shit out of us. We then heard footsteps above us in her bedroom where she died. It was scary and not comforting for us or the cat. My mom had committed suicide and had been really despondent after my dad died. She was also the kind of person who never wanted anyone to feel sorry for her. I think we got too personal about her life and pissed her off. I had several other uncomfortable moments in her house while cleaning it out. My then 8-year-old son and I were packing boxes and her bedroom door slammed shut. It was a nice day, no windows or doors open. My son looked at me and asked, "Why is Granny so sad?" Ghost dreams. My grandmother coming to me in a dream to tell me she died. I was in China at the time. When I called home, my family and girlfriend lied about it. The next night I had the same dream and called home to check in, but they lied again. I finally got my girlfriend to admit it. The dream stopped. When I got home, I was told that the last thing my grandmother said was to ask for me by name. Ghostly message. Another one. When my dad became somewhat of a believer, was in his 50s. My grandmother was in hospice and we received the news she had passed away. My dad and I were on the back porch hanging out, talking about everything. He seemed off though. Yes, I know his mother passed, but this was different. He seemed off. I asked him about it, and he said he had the strangest dream the night my grandmother died. He was in the room with her in Michigan. We live in Virginia. My grandmother stood up, hugged and kissed him, and told him everything would be okay. She proceeded to somehow walk out of some new door in the room that led to a green pasture with other relatives that had passed. He could only recognize his grandparents, the others he didn't know who they were, but something in his gut said they were other relatives my grandmother knew. It's crazy because now when we talk about it, he doesn't act like it's a big deal. He was just having a crazy dream that was influenced by the situation. But he dreamed it the night she passed away. It was like the other relatives and her were telling him, "It'll be okay, I'm better off now." Mom. My mom passed away in early November of 2005. I had gotten married at the end of May of that year and waited to tell the family that she was sick until the end of June. She didn't want to take away from the joy of the baby, of the family getting married. It was way too fast and none of us were ready to let her go. She always said that she wanted to go at home, no hospital or hospice. Said it for years, especially after my dad passed when I was 16. He passed at home, surrounded by all of us up until the end. And that was what she wanted too. In the house he built with his bare hands and the house they raised the family in. So that's what we did. Basically, her 6 children moved back home and stayed with her for the final 2 months. We took shifts to see our husband, wives, work during that time, but at any given point, there were 4 of us there 24 hours a day, making sure she was surrounded by love and never alone. Now, I didn't take her death well. I did everything that needed to be done and kept myself together, but we were close and this was so fast, and I didn't want to believe it. I can't tell you the number of times I caught myself calling her, to then just stare at the phone mid-dial and realize she wouldn't pick up. Well, a month after she passed, I was alone at my own home watching TV. It was only about 7, so dark at the time of year in New England, when movement caught my eye from the left. 12 feet from me, my mom walked through my kitchen, stirring something in a bowl. She paused in the doorway, gave a little wave with her fingers from the hand wrapped around the bowl, as her head tilted with a smile and moved past the doorway. I was frozen to where I was sitting, so I called out, "Mom," and heard her laugh, her healthy laugh, from before she got sick and couldn't smile anymore, let alone laugh. I went to the kitchen, but there was nothing. I swear on my life that this was real. She was there. Thing is, my mom was a great baker. She passed a lot of her recipes on to me, and while not as often as I would have liked, we baked together. It was time that made both of us happy. We laughed, chatted, gossiped, and drank tea while we waited for some delicious concoction to come from the oven. To this day, whenever I make her cheesecake, cookies, cream puffs, or meringues, I'm happy. I dance around the kitchen as I stir the bowl, and I think of her and the time she visited me. She has only visited me in my dreams since, always to warn me or help me with a problem that I'm having. I like to think that she was able to muster the energy to come see me in person just this once, so that I knew that she was okay, I didn't have to be sad, and that she would always be there. Creepy old farmhouse. My biological dad lives in a creepy old farmhouse he renovated. I was helping him build out the office late one night. He went up to the bathroom and I kept plunking away. I was on the floor and set my hammer down. I felt something, a presence. and looked to where I thought someone would be. Nothing. I reached back down for my hammer, and it's out of arm's reach. Maybe 5 feet further than where I had set it down. I hadn't moved at all. He comes back after he's finished, and I tell him what just happened. He laughed and said, "The little girl must be playing with you." Little girl what? He then tells me that every now and then he hears a little girl laughing and has even seen her. She's always wearing the same pair of overalls, and she just kind of wanders around upstairs. I'm not one to believe in paranormal experiences, but I have no explanation other than a little girl ghost just wanted to play. Talking to ghosts. My dad was remodeling an old house, and stuff like this would happen. He was warned of this by the owners. He surprised me by telling me he'd explain out loud what he was doing during the remodeling, so the ghost knew he wasn't there to ruin the house, but fix things that needed fixing, replace things. The new owners loved this house and wanted to keep it good, looking good, he'd say. Made him feel better anyway. Little girl ghost. I had a little girl that haunted the house I lived. She mostly just liked to play games like hide stuff from you. Something would be on the table, go upstairs, and when you came back down, nowhere to be found. Noticed when I asked nicely, when I did the routine again, it would be in the exact spot it was before. Unfortunately, she liked to give you the absolute worst nightmares and sleep paralysis ever occasionally. Laughter. I encountered the ghost of a little girl once too. She was in my parents' old house, which is where I grew up as a teenager. I heard a clear voice wake me up from sleep a few times, saying hello. I was never afraid, and I never thought much of it until it happened a few times. Then one night she left 2 distinct syllables. Heh. I feel bad for her, honestly. Both my ghost and yours. Imagine being a kid trapped on the other side of a place you know, unable to do hardly anything to it. You're alone. Nobody can meaningfully interact with you. And worst of all, are the other things that occasionally wander this side of reality with you. It's got to be terrifying. Ghost kitty. When I was younger, I used to see a black cat that would follow me around. It wasn't an everyday occurrence, but sometimes I would see them, and once I got a real good look at it. Black cat with bright green eyes. Anyway, I never really talked about the cat following me around, and I don't remember mentioning it to anyone. As I got older, I noticed it less, until one day my brother asked me out of the blue, what happened to the black cat that used to follow me? That freaked me out a little. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. But how did he know about the black cat, and that they were missing? Sebastian. I used to work in a bar that wasn't exactly a jail, but temporarily held people awaiting court and sentencing. Everyone had stories about the residential ghost who we called Sebastian. First time I saw Sebastian, I looked down the stairs while I was opening and saw some legs in black pants and smart shoes. The ceiling obscured his torso upwards. When I went downstairs to ask how he got in, he ran down the hallway and vanished. A few other staff members mentioned seeing a man in a black suit who would be in the bar after hours while you'd be cleaning. But when you'd approach or speak to him, he'd turn a corner and disappear. Sometimes after closing, you'd hear someone ringing bells on staff members' bikes downstairs, or you'd hear a crash and the bikes would be moved to a different place. Other times you'd see a man in black duck into the office, and by the time you'd enter, he'd be gone. The clincher that convinced us all that it wasn't just a thing we all believed, because we all joked about it so often, was the day the new chefs came in. They didn't speak much English and would leave once dinner service was over, so they never engaged in the Sebastian stories. One day one of them asked about a man in black, kept leaning on the ordering window while they were cleaning. Sebastian was pretty chill though. He never scared us or did anything mean. I think he just liked hanging out. Grandpa Ghosty. When I was 15, my dad was driving to a friend's house to practice some roller hockey. My buddy lived in a 2-story log cabin with a long winding driveway. It was the first time I'd been to his house and had been told his parents wouldn't be home until later in the evening. As we drove up, my dad says he thought my friend's parents weren't home, and I told him they weren't. He then points to a 2nd-story window and says, "Well, someone is here." I looked up and see an older male dressed in Western clothing and wearing a big cowboy hat. This is Texas, so that isn't unusual. I said, "I guess they got home early," and shrugged it off. A while later, I mentioned something about asking his parents something, and he says they won't be home till later. I point out both my dad and I saw someone in his house, and he freaks out because no one was supposed to be there. We then go in the house to check it out and don't find anyone. After his parents got home, we were in the back room of the house, and I see a picture of the guy who had been upstairs. I point it out to my buddy, and he turns white and says that was his granddad, who died 6 years earlier. Turns out my buddy's parents believed the house to be haunted by multiple spirits. Man-hating ghost. Was visiting a friend in Chicago. She told me under no certain terms the ghost of a woman who lived there wasn't really fond of men staying there. I was told that I needed to make sure I closed my door behind me, lest she slammed the door behind me. Sure as shit. First night I'm there, I get up to go pee in the middle of the night. I didn't close the bedroom door. When I came back from the bathroom, door slammed so hard it knocked a piece of art off the damn wall. Knocking. We started hearing knocks on the siding, 2nd floor, as if someone was at the door. This followed loud banging in the basement every night. I decided to record through the night, and this snowflake ornament started spinning long after all had gone to bed. There was no draft, as the other ornaments didn't move. When I played it back, I heard a man's voice repeatedly calling me a hoe. I still live there. Woman in white. My girlfriend and I were driving back to her parents' house when I was probably 17 or 18. We went down this one road and she screamed for me to swerve. I figured she'd seen a deer. When I turned my head, I see a woman dressed in white pushing a white bassinet. She was also holding a boy's hand, and he was wearing white. They weren't in my rear view. Home alone. When I was about 12, during a summer, my sister, who is 5 years older than me, was out with friends after work. We shared a bedroom. I was up late doodling in a notebook in bed and had an older glass TV next to my bed that was turned off. At one point, I looked up and saw in the reflection of the TV screen my sister walk out of our bedroom and into the stairwell. When I turned around to greet her, she wasn't there. I get up and walk into the stairwell, and all the lights are still off downstairs and in the bathroom next to our bedroom. So I think she must have ran downstairs really fast and head down myself to find no one again. At this point, I'm getting a little spooked, and I wanted to prove myself wrong, so I went outside and her car was still gone. I sprint back inside and run back upstairs to my parents' room and wake my mom up to tell her I was pretty sure I had just seen a ghost. She was too tired to do much for it, and so I went back to my bedroom, petrified. When I thought back on it, I realized the girl was in a long-sleeved dress that looked somewhat vintage, and my sister was very much a tomboy in those days. But she had blonde hair like my sister and was looking towards me while walking out of the room. I stayed awake with my light on until my actual sister got home, and I felt safe to sleep. Still creeps me out a bit to think that about it to this day. I don't really believe much in an afterlife, but I know I saw a young girl walking out of the door. I wasn't really tired. I hadn't been watching anything earlier in the evening to scare me. And even further, wasn't scared when I first saw her because I thought it was just my sister. I can't explain it though. Never saw her or anything like it again. Blessing. I can believe this. Shortly before the birth of my third child, I was super stressed about everything. Standard stuff, juggling work with decorating the nursery, praying for a healthy baby, etc. One night, I had a dream that I was sitting on the stairs just outside the nursery, and my long-since-dead grandma came walking up the stairs, sat down next to me, put her arm around me, and told me that everything was going to be all right. It was so comforting and felt so real. I am as skeptical as they come, but this will always stay with me as a special moment that felt like more than just a dream. Nightly visit. My grandma came to me the night she passed too. I was in school and working, so I couldn't leave to visit her. My dad said it was okay and to focus on school. A couple of days later, she came to me in my dream. She looked like she did when I was a kid and was wearing pajamas she always wore. She said she was leaving. In the dream, I felt like I knew where she was going and understood. I told her I was going to miss her, and she said she would too. Woke up and my buddy was giving me a ride to work and my dad calls me crying. She had passed. I told my dad my dream and he believed me. He was happy that I saw her before she left. I don't believe in ghosts, gods, or anything supernatural, but I still can't deny what happened. One sweet, one spooky. When she was one, she gently touched a picture of my wife's deceased grandfather, whom she would not have known anything about at that point, as we did not explain death yet, and did not talk about deceased family members yet, and said that she met him before she was born, and that he was nice to her. He is the person she was named for, and that incident made me feel really, really happy. Whenever anyone asks what happens when you die, my answer is now. I have no idea, but it's the same place you were in before you were born. When she was 2, she was talking to somebody, apparently a little boy, that was not there. When I asked about her imaginary friend, she solemnly told me that he lived in our house a long time ago. I asked no further questions. About a year later, after we moved out, our neighbor caught his kid talking to an imaginary friend. When asked, he was told that the boy she was playing with was my daughter's friend. At least if it was a ghost, it was friendly. That's the end of our stories for today. I hope you enjoyed them. Please subscribe. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great night.